While Katherine Addison is best known for the standalone fantasy novel The Goblin Emperor, which is a superb read, I have a great fondness for a trilogy she wrote known as the Cemeteries of Amalo. In fact, I would say they are even better than The Goblin Emperor. There's a style of writing used by some of the best fantasy novelists which I am not a great fan of. It can be described as young adult and is perhaps aimed at readers who still need things spelled out to them. Usually, the main characters are introduced in the first chapter. They are described in detail and we are given an explanation of who they are and how they are connected to others in the story. Quite often, we learn all this through the eyes of a young person, usually a teenager, who aspires to help his or her family in ways that often involve peril or personal sacrifice, or both. I call it Dan Brown-style writing. A good example can be found in the Da Vinci Code, when we are introduced very early on to the male protagonist Robert Langdon. He looks into the mirror and describes what he sees staring back. A face with a strong jaw and dimpled chin, covered in dark stubble, sharp blue eyes, hazy and drawn with exhaustion, and coarse black hair greying at the temples. This doesn't really work for me. I'm not being asked to imagine what he might look like, I'm being told. This is not a criticism. After all, fantasy is in many ways pulp fiction, and there are authors who adhere to this style to great effect, selling millions of books. Some of them spin a great yarn, and you can't argue with success. But Katherine Addison, along with a few others in fantasy, including the likes of Guy Gavriel Kay and Gene Wolfe, write on a higher level. And for me, Katherine Addison is the best example of this. To begin with, The Witness for the Dead, the first book in the Cemeteries of Amalo trilogy, is narrated by an unlikely hero, a priest who can speak to the dead. We gradually begin to get a clear picture of what he looks like through his daily routine. We're not told what he wears. We learn that he has to choose between 2 or 3 threadbare and shabby coats. We can infer he's poor. Through the people he meets and the conversations he has, we get an idea that he's a humble person living with personal tragedy, slight of stature and very shy. The person in question is the Othala Selahar, and as I gradually got a picture of this deeply honest and humble man, I became inordinately fond of him and invested in his success and happiness. Addison's world-building is equally sophisticated. She doesn't explain the world Othala Selahar lives in. As with the man himself, we just get a picture of a society in the early stages of industrialization as he hurries about his business, shivering in his shabby coat against the biting cold. A picture of an ordered society where poverty is common, murder infrequent, and petty officialdom is rife, which Othala Selahar has to fight against at every turn. There are no swords and very little sorcery in The Witness for the Dead. There are very few dramatic incidents. The crux of the story lies in the fact our unlikely hero can commune with the dead and as such can solve murders by asking victims who killed them. This is gentle fantasy, beautifully written, where we follow a humble and dutiful priest as he solves murders and helps those who are grieving for loved ones find some sort of closure. My only quibble with Addison's writing is the vocabulary she has invented for people, places and things. Most of it is quite dense and unpronounceable. The Cemeteries of Amalo are not for everybody. If you're still haunting the young adult section in your local bookshop, these stories may not be for you. They are hard to classify. They're not grimdark, epic or high fantasy. They have elements of urban fantasy and a touch of the gothic in them, but Addison's books don't really fit there either. They're not even part of the occult, hardboiled detective fantasy made popular by Glenn Cook's Garrett P.I. or Jim Butcher's Dresden Files. If you twisted my arm, I'd place them in the recent trend known as cozy fantasy that ignores epic battles, mighty heroes, and world-ending threats. And as I write this, I realize I've hardly mentioned the plot of The Witness for the Dead. If you want to find out more, you can download a sample from Amazon or wander into a bookshop and have a look at a copy. You'll learn soon enough if they're your cup of tea. The 3 books in the Cemeteries of Amalo consist of The Witness for the Dead, The Grief of Stones, and The Tomb of Dragons. Thoroughly recommended. Well, that's all for this week. If you enjoy these podcasts and find them useful, please follow or subscribe. If you want to help in the cost of making them, you can buy me a cup of coffee.